I have huge faith in what this medium can be. And I'd like to be a piece of that, the history of that medium. You know, I mean, I doubt I will see out its full glory. You know, I mean, it's a garden. It's going to take a long, long time to grow.
If there's one message that I want to convey through this video, regardless of the quality of the game in question, it is this singular point. Clive Barker is an absolute legend. There are few authors out there that are as prolific as him without sacrificing quality, and he's one of the only writers out there that really nails that sort of horror that lies in the fringes of the human psyche and the existential dread of your own mortality and perceptive limitations. Now, I'm not much of a reader these days, but I am a white guy in my late 20s. So I do consider myself an amateur film bro, and Clive Barker has certainly left his mark on that realm as well, having created horror movie icons like Pinhead and Candyman. Rest in peace, Tony Todd. Truly a Renaissance man, he's also attempted to venture into the gaming sphere several times. But, unfortunately, this aspect of his career seems to be cursed. In 1990, 2 games were released based on his film Nightbreed, which, as a quick side note, would highly recommend this movie. It's far from a masterpiece, but it's so fucking weird and fun that it still kind of rocks. It has David Cronenberg playing a serial killer with one of the hardest masks of all time, so if that doesn't sell you on it, I don't know what will. Anyway, the intention was to make a trilogy of games based on Nightbreed, but the first 2 flopped so hard financially that the third one never even came out. His next foray into gaming was a decade later with Clive Barker's Undying for the PC. This one you might have heard of, as it's gained a pretty big cult following over the years, but unfortunately, its popularity came too little too late. And despite being received fairly well by critics, the poor sales meant that the planned console ports were scrapped, and this would be chalked up as another failed venture for Clive Barker. Which brings us to 2007, and Clive Barker's final video game project. Well, his final realized one, anyway. Jericho. I actually do remember there being some hype around this game at launch, and I played the demo back in the day and thought it was pretty good, but it unfortunately released smack dab between 2 games that you may have heard of. Those being Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4, which are, not exaggerating, 2 of the most important and seminal games of my adolescence, and really of gaming history. So it got pushed pretty far to the back burner for me. Its review scores also didn't really do it any favors. So here I am, 17 years later. Sorry, I just had a minor existential crisis realizing how long ago that was. So here I am, sitting down to satisfy almost 2 decades of curiosity, and also to get every achievement, in Clive Barker's Jericho. The first thing any good achievement whore checks for is a difficulty achievement, which, there's quite a lot of. In fact, most of the achievements in this game are for beating levels on the hard difficulty, sometimes even without dying. So we're gonna go straight into hard. Now usually I skim over the story and the plot of the games that I cover on this channel, partially because I'm an achievement hunting channel, and partially because I just don't want to spoil the story any more than I have to. But in this case, the story is obviously the part that Clive Barker had his hands in the most, and as a result, it's by far the most interesting part of this game. So I'm actually going to cover it pretty closely as I progress through the achievements. Right off the bat, our first loading screen gives us some exposition, which certainly isn't the most ideal way to convey lore, but whatever. It explains that when God created Adam and Eve, it was actually his second attempt at making life. His first attempt at creating a being in his own image resulted in this.
Oh, black baby, bam, bam. Oh, black baby, bow, bow.
Neither male nor female, dark nor light, God was so disturbed by his own creation, yet unable to destroy it, that he banished it to the biblical abyss to be forgotten and unloved. Our player, Ross, voiced by the iconic Steve Blum, is the leader of Jericho Squad, and the exposition dumps that they are essentially a covert supernatural combat branch of the US Army. Each member of the team has some different supernatural or psychic ability and was recruited into a war against eldritch evils. So, okay, getting some secret world, Da Vinci Code type vibes, I'm here for it. En route to the first level, our squad mate explains that the ancient city of Al-Khali is rumored to hold some sort of vast divine power, and as a result has been lusted over throughout human history by dozens of famed conquerors. Your organization, the Department of Occult Warfare, or DOW, has built a research base there to study the city. A fellow member of the DOW, a man named Arnold Leach, has gone rogue and has been committing acts of terror and ritual sacrifices and other depraved acts along with his cult, the Dark Brotherhood. The Brotherhood of the Dark Rapture. And now he's turned his sights on Al-Khali, and Jericho is flying in to stop him. Hopping off the chopper, I use this opportunity to check out the visual design of the squad. We got Rawlings, whose priest getup looks suspiciously like an SS uniform. Delgado, who at first I thought had a minigun for an arm, which is badass, but it turns out the minigun is just attached to his arm, which is a big obsidian obelisk, I guess? We have Abby, who is our goth sniper girl, Jones, a blind dude with a Mr. T mohawk, Cole, a white girl with dreads, and finally Church, who has a sick katana that traps the souls of its victims. The amount of out-of-date references I do on this fucking channel. The whole squad is basically dressed head to toe in tight leather outfits, which I can't tell if that's just due to this being one of the most 2007 Xbox 360 games of all time, or if that's just the Clive Barker influence. We make our way through the ruins to link up with the, Swiss Guard? Okay, wait, no, this is already off to an interesting start. If you don't know, the Swiss Guard are the historical armed forces of the Vatican. They're basically the Pope's secret service, so this is already delving into some cool occult conspiracy territory. Considering by the time that we reach them, they're just a pile of gore, they could have just as easily been written to be, a generic military squad. So props for these little details in the world building. We find our way into some tunnels when the game instantly tosses you into a QuickTime event. Did I mention this was the most 2007 Xbox 360 game ever? But thankfully, failing the QuickTime event doesn't even throw you back to a loading screen. You just seamlessly start over from the top. Because of this, it also doesn't count as a death. So keep that in mind for the achievements that require us to complete specific missions without dying. Failing QTEs will not void these achievements. The set dressing here definitely sets the tone for the game. Dusty ancient ruins engulfed in indiscriminate gore and viscera with a few intact corpses sprinkled throughout. We encounter some cultists that you refuse to engage before Delgado acts as the voice of reason.
I don't think they're alive, sir.
Permission to fire.
Hold fire!
Bullshit, man! Look at him! He said hold fire!
I mean, yeah, he's right. Look at them. Imagine seeing these guys and thinking, hold your fire, they might be friendly. After killing these guys, swarms of flies come to devour the corpses, which is a clever and creative way of freeing up game memory while also having it fit the setting and, as we'll see later, the themes of decay and entropy. And we'll learn more about these flies later on too. Continuing on, we are once again beckoned by Black Baby, before finally reaching the DOW research facility itself, which ends the level and gets us our first achievement for beating the level on hard. And it's here that I just want to note going forward, I'm not going to mention all of the achievements that are just for completing the level on hard, as it'd kind of be a waste of breath. Fighting our way into the facility, we reach a lone survivor. Again, this character could easily be a nobody just here to drop exposition, especially given that this is the first and last time that we talk to her. But no, she has a name, Muriel Green, and a biography, and even history with Rawlings, which adds another layer onto his character.
Prague, 1999, New Year's Eve at the Hotel Bohemia. We danced a Cole Porter tune sung in Czech, then drank ourselves stupid on absinthe. I'm afraid my memory gets a bit fuzzy after that.
color me impressed. The presentation isn't perfect, and the voice acting is a little hammy, but so far, the writing is a mark above what I was expecting. She alludes to something called Operation Godseal, which seems to be an apocalyptic level event, but before we can get more out of her, the rest of the team is attacked and needs backup. After assessing her yee-ass haircut, we decide to leave her behind to help our squad mates. And it's here we find another fun world-building detail on the loading screen for the next mission. It mentions German interest in Al-Khali during the Second World War, and name-drops the Thule Society. You might know that name from Wolfenstein or Hellboy, but the Thule Society was a group of German occultists formed after World War I. It had a bunch of ties to secret societies and esoteric knowledge, and was obsessed with, racial purity. Yeah, it's argued that it paved the way for the early Nazi party. But nevertheless, again, very cool that the writers are intertwining real history and conspiracy stuff into the plot. Even though the Thule Society was dissolved in 1925, so they wouldn't actually be around for World War II, but I'll just pretend in the Jericho canon that they continued operating in secret well into the Second World War. Shortly into the next mission, we encounter our second enemy type, explosive cultists. These have 2 to 3 yellow pustules on their body that you need to shoot, lest they explode and insta-kill everyone around them. Shooting them anywhere else just wastes ammo. These guys are going to be the bane of our existence towards the end of the game. Since they can just pop out of the ground right next to you, it's kind of unfair. We learn from some CSI-ass dialogue that Cole, the white girl Dreads, is our resident nerd.
Cole, I need you to do some extreme data recovery. You up to it?
That depends on the level of temporal distortion experienced at the site in relation to the event horizon of the breach itself. If the vortex is strong enough to cause a feedback loop, then theoretically, if the data existed, then it's always existed, sir.
I have no idea what you just said.
I think I can recover the data, sir.
Good enough for me.
And then we survive an ambush by a bunch of explosive cultists by using the elite strategy of taking turns, tanking their explosions, and then just reviving each other once the smoke clears. We're still on the first level, mind you. This is not a good sign. We return to the facility to find Muriel dead, and after fending off waves of enemies, we learn that the rogue DOW agent Leech has been building negative karma by committing acts of horror and violence across the world in an attempt to harness that negative karma to open the gates of Al-Khali.
Leech.
I'm gonna cook you, you piece of shit.
Hey, that voice is actually kind of cool. I wonder who the voice actor for Leech is. Huh. We get attacked by some flying gargoyle enemies, and they're pretty fucking annoying because they're super fast, so they're tough to get a shot on, and even then, some of them have shields. The ranged attack is also just shy of a one-shot on hard, but don't worry, they'll be a lot easier to take out once we get full access to all of our abilities. After fending them off, we get ambushed by Leech, who has malformed into a gargoyle creature himself, and he actually tears Ross to shreds.
To shreds, you say?
Without realizing it, we, meaning Ross, warp into the mind of Delgado and escape with the squad into this breach, leaving our mortal, dying form behind. And thus, we finally get to the main mechanic of the game. Ross's ghost has the ability to psychically take over the bodies of each of his squad mates, allowing us as the player to functionally change our loadouts at will. Each character has a unique weapon, a special ability, and a different playstyle. It's a great mechanic because, as we'll see, the enemy variety kind of keeps you on your toes, and certain squad mates are better equipped to take down certain enemies. It's a pretty satisfying core mechanic, or at least it would be if one character wasn't remarkably OP compared to the others, but we'll get to that too. For now, they piecemeal it, and the first characters you get to play as are Delgado and Abby. Like I mentioned before, Delgado has a minigun and a weird obsidian monolith on his arm. Well, now we find out that contained within it is Abominili, the Chickasaw sun deity. Or at least that's what Delgado thinks it is. It could just be a fire demon. See, Delgado has Mestizo and Chickasaw blood, and found his niche in shamanic spiritualism. He can summon the fire deity at will, but in return it feeds on his arm, which is why it's all burnt and scabby. Again, this is some really neat world building, and shows that while the game is focused around monotheistic occultism, other religions and mythology are also very much at play. Abby, on the other hand, is straight out of Wanted. She has telekinesis, which allows her to direct and curve bullets from her sniper any direction she wants, allowing you to chain up to 3 headshots with enough skill. Her sniper's alt fire is also a grenade launcher that insta-jibs most enemies on a direct hit. And she also has a wimpy little telekinetic blast, but I honestly never used it other than when it was needed to clear a path. Get used to Abby because not only is her sniper and bullet curving the most OP combo in the game, but it's also the one you'll need to use the most for achievements. You'll spend a solid 75% of the game as Abby. Actually, let me talk about the achievements now. So there are 4 cumulative achievements in this game. Each of them are to get 250 kills with a certain ability. 3 of those abilities are either exclusive to or just best done by Abby. Those 3 are Ghost Bullet kills, which are Abby's guided bullets, Head Pops, which is done by headshots from a powerful weapon, i.e. Abby's sniper using Ghost Bullets, and then Disintegrations, which you can do with direct hits from Abby's grenade launcher. The only other cumulative kill achievement is melee kills, which you can easily farm from an exploit towards the end of the game. So basically what all that means is, despite the cool design of being able to swap bodies at will, when it comes to achievements, you're incentivized to play as Abby as much as you can. Which isn't an entirely bad thing, as the Ghost Bullets and grenade launcher are very satisfying and insta-kill most enemies. In this first part, you won't have access to her ghost ability yet, but you can start racking up those disintegrations. I'll still cover all of the best parts of the game to farm these kills later on, regardless, but they're all towards the end of the game. The next character you get to play as is Church, who's the Katana Girl. Her whole thing is blood magic, meaning her abilities will use some of her health, which is cool, but this is really kinda dangerous and not optimal for hard difficulty. The same goes for Melee in general, which is kind of her whole shtick, so I'd avoid playing as her for the most part. At the beginning of the next level, Cole lets you take over her, but her abilities are pretty lackluster. She can give everyone fire ammo, but only for a brief moment, because apparently her tech implants in her brain start to distort reality around her, and she starts to fucking lose it if you use them for too long. She's also the narrative reason why you guys never run out of ammo, as after each encounter, she just automatically downloads more.
I'm downloading additional supplies, sir.
Thanks.
I don't know, I tried to find an explanation here, but I couldn't, so maybe it's best not to question it. She downloads you more ammo whenever you're empty. As we jump into the next mission, we get our first taste of what is, in my opinion, Jericho's greatest strength: its setting. I'm gonna jump a little ahead of the plot to explain. So, Black Baby, who's canonically called the Firstborn, was sealed away by God in this extra-dimensional pocket called the Pyxis. Every few hundred or 1,000 years, some evil freaks learn about the Firstborn, and they try to unleash it from its prison, either to harness its power, or worship it, or whatever. And every time they create a bridge in reality to the Pyxis, a religious sect sends 7 warrior priests to seal the breach. And this has happened numerous times, dating all the way back to the very cradle of human civilization in ancient Sumeria. So your team isn't the first to enter the Pyxis to close it, not by a long shot, and it won't be the last either. This Jericho squad is basically the Degrassi The Next Generation, or the That 90s Show, the Saved by the Bell, the new class, the Girl Meets World, But here's the catch. Each time someone closes the breach, the Firstborn takes just a little bit more of reality with it back into its prison. So it gets a little stronger with each iteration, meaning that eventually the warrior priests will lose their millennia-spanning war, and the Firstborn will consume humanity. It's very much a Dark Souls situation, where lighting the first flame is only prolonging the inevitable. The other unfortunate reality is that the 7 warrior priests, i.e. us, never return from their mission. They too are swallowed up by the Pixis, their fate unknown. Father Rawlings here, being the most senior DOW agent, knew about all of this and understandably kept that information from the rest of the squad, much to Delgado's dismay.
What about the previous squad? How did they close the breach?
We don't know. They never came back out.
Well, that's just fucking beautiful. Maybe they left us a note.
Delgado, holster your goddamn weapon!
Frank, what's wrong with you?
I didn't sign up for no fucking suicide mission.
If you're gonna point that at me, you better use it.
Holy shit!
What have you done?
Oh, fuck.
Frank, stop it!
is wrong with you, man?
Paul!
Delgado, stand down! Abby, constrict him.
Sir, do you think you can resurrect him?
One way to find out. Everybody stand back.
What? Oh. Jones, I want you to place this man under arrest. Don't do it, Jones. He's lying. What else isn't he telling us?
Delgado, you accidentally discharged your weapon.
That was no accident.
Right, Delgado?
Sure. An accident.
Okay, the fairly dated presentation aside, this is some really nice character writing. Rawlings knew that they're all gonna die sealing this breach. Well shit, death is the best possible outcome, but he understandably kept it need to know so the team couldn't back out. It's a genuine moral dilemma. He's not just an asshole withholding information for dramatic effect, this is literally about the fate of human existence. I mean, hell, he's gonna die alongside everyone else too, even if they succeed. He's going down with the ship. But at the same time, Delgado's reaction is, it's also reasonable. He feels like he was duped into throwing away his life. Anyway, what this whole cyclical time dimension means for the game is it functionally is a fucked up Clive Barker time travel game. If you haven't figured it out from the concrete bunkers and the barbed wire, we are now in a section of the Pixis that was swallowed up when the Nazis tried to unseal the Firstborn during World War II. And along with the setting, we get new enemy types in the form of monstrous German soldiers. They come in variants, machine gunners, mortarmen, flamethrowers, and they can all be pretty spongy, so I'd utilize Abby's grenade launcher to turn them into paste. For the flamers specifically, Delgado's left bumper ability is a shield that blocks all fire damage, so I just used that to get close and then whipped out his little Native American Kamehameha. Here you also get the ability to control the last two squad members, Rawlings and Jones. Rawlings is the group healer, and he has dual magnums, each of which can shoot 3 different ammo types, explosive, flechette, and normal. This is pretty dope on paper, but every time I used him, no matter what ammo I used, it still felt like it took way too many bullets to kill anything, which might just be a difficulty thing. But his long-range revive ability will come in clutch on the harder levels. And Jones is... he's kinda useless, if I'm being honest. His power is that he can astral project and see through enemies' eyes, and then also use kinesis to pull levers that only they can see, but it's a power that is functionally useless, except for during a few scripted puzzle sequences. His weapon is also identical to Ross's from the beginning of the game. I guess they didn't feel like giving Ross a unique weapon since he dies within the first 10 minutes. We end up running into some unexpected allies here. British OSS commandos. See, these jolly old chaps were the 7 quote-unquote warrior priests who sealed the breach back in 1945. And thus, we learn the fate that awaits the Jericho squad. These Brits have been holding out here, fending off unrelenting waves of creatures for 65 years. Time doesn't really function in the Pixis, so these guys are stuck in this twisted Valhalla, never aging, forced to fight until they fall or until we fail. Their only duty is to survive, so that they can guide the next poor 7 souls sent into the breach, all so that they can eventually share the same fate. This is fucking awesome! It's incredibly depressing, but it's an awesome concept. Each layer of the Pixis is an era frozen in time, with 7 people slowly losing their mind as they spend eternity fending off hordes and hordes of creatures. all just waiting to shepherd the next 7 victims to the same fate. And should they fail, the flies claim their corpse and they are twisted and reborn as servants of the firstborn. It really plays into that whole theme of futility and prolonging the inevitable. Anyway, I know I said that the whole time travel setting is the game's biggest strength, and I am very much one of those guys who obsess a little too much over the World Wars, but all things considered, the World War II levels are easily the weakest in my opinion, from a gameplay perspective. Maybe if there was more enemy variety, or at least visual variety. All 3 enemy types look almost identical, and they're pretty boring to fight. You do eventually get the ghost ability here, but it's pretty wonky against the German enemies since their hitboxes aren't really properly mapped. The boss of the World War II act is also just sort of a caricature of the female BDSM Nazi commandant that we've seen a million times. It's all just a little underwhelming. There aren't any achievements to get in the World War II section either, aside from just beating it on hard, so we slit the throat of the Nazi witch and say goodbye to our friends from across the pond.
Cole, can you give me a reading on the date? How far back have we gone?
We're not gonna find out standing around here.
According to planetary alignment, the year is 1213 AD, sir.
Welcome to the Crusades, soldier. And welcome to our first achievement for beating a level without getting incapacitated. There's gonna be a bunch of these achievements going forward, but luckily, all you gotta do is restart the checkpoint if you get downed, not the whole level. So it doesn't put you out too much. If you're taking a lot of damage, you can also just swap bodies with another teammate, as it doesn't matter if your NPC friends get downed. Now that we have Ghost Bullet too, get used to using it in, like, every encounter. It's a godsend against those annoying flying fuckers. So go for headshots so that hopefully their heads also pop to work towards both of those cumulative achievements. And for the explosive cultists, it's easier just to grenade launcher them for the disintegration kills, but again, we'll get to a part where we can comfortably farm all of these kills later. These giant blood beasts might seem intimidating at first, but if you just stand back and alternate between Abby's ghost bullets and the grenade launcher to take out each of the sigils around their face, they're actually really easy. You won't even get hit once. The fourth one you encounter has an unbreakable rune on the top of their head, so once you shatter the others, you need to do a God of War QuickTime event as Church, but remember, failing these don't count as a death, so even if you fuck it up, it won't invalidate the achievement. After this enemy, you're in the clear for getting the achievement. The mission ends with the squad getting split up before you meet a Templar, one of the 7 warrior priests from this section of the Pixis, who has been here in this hell for 800 years. Well, surprise! He immediately betrays you because he's come to believe that Leech is the biblical archangel Gabriel. Brother, I don't know how the fuck you look at that thing and think, yeah, that's one of the good guys, that's one of God's children. But I suppose 800 years in a demonic pocket dimension might take a little toll on your sanity. But don't worry, in true Clive Barker spirit, it gets much darker. We discover another one of the Knights Templar who is still somewhat in his right mind, and he fills us in on how this layer of the Pixis came to be. Back in the Middle Ages, a bishop named Malthius learned of Alkali and the power that it held. He convinced the Pope to let him lead a crusade to reclaim the Holy Land from the Saracens. He also convinced the Pope that Christian children, in their youthful purity, could not be harmed by the Saracens. So Malthius led a literal child army to the Middle East to get slaughtered by what I assume were very confused and probably kind of horrified Arabs. The Knights Templar were sent to stop him, but unfortunately, they were too late. Whether Malthius actually believed in the plan or not remains to be seen, but regardless, the massacre of thousands of innocent children was enough of a karma bomb to once again open a breach into the Pixis, and 7 of those Templars journeyed into the unknown to seal it, as penance for their failure to save the children. Woo! Did not have toddler genocide on my bingo card when I booted this game up. So back to the one sane Crusader. He gives us a hint at the time period of the next layer, which is, again, kind of a cool detail.
If you do find your way to the next breach, be sure to send my regards to the Centurion. I'm sure he's still hanging about somewhere.
It's easy to forget that this guy was in our shoes just 800 years ago. He successfully fought his way through the Pixis layers below his own, so he knows what awaits you. In the sewers, we encounter medieval crossbowmen with explosive arrows, but these guys get chewed up pretty easily with Abby's ghost bullets, so we use those to take them out from a safe distance. Same with the undead Crusader enemies, though they have a shield that makes ghost bullet headshots a little tricky, but it's nothing a good old-fashioned noob tube can't solve. Eventually, we reach the Catacombs, where we meet the third new enemy type of the Crusades layer, which is...
Is anyone else seeing this?
The tortured souls of the Child Army. Yes, they are floating, bisected top halves of little children in Crusader armor. These little rascals start out ephemeral and impervious to damage, but once they materialize, you can take them out the same as any other enemy, which is to say, a ghost bullet through the brain. At the end of the next level, we finally reconvene with our squad to find Cole wigging out.
It's okay, Simone. You're safe now.
Don't touch me.
You're hurt. Let me help you.
I said don't fucking touch me! Everyone stay back!
What the hell happened to you guys?
The children. My God. So much anger, so much hatred. They wanted us to suffer as much as they suffered.
It's like they were in my head, cutting from the inside.
I think Cole got the worst of it. You know she has problems. Fear of the dark, fear of being touched, fear of tight spaces.
Wait.
Don't touch me!
It's okay, Simone. Tell me about that number you like so much. The Golden Principle. Was that what you called it?
This isn't real! Nothing here is real!
How did that number go, Simone? You called it something. Phi?
Phi! Phi! The divine proportion.
Phi, right. How did that go?
1.6, 180,
Good. Now, let's lower the gun.
7498.
Neat trick. What'd you do, rebooter?
Just one of the benefits of sharing a bunk with her. Now, if we could just work on the bedwetting.
Wait a second. Oh, yeah, okay. Checks out. It checks out. I joke, but I think it's actually cool that the hacker character isn't just like a sexy nerd and instead is like an actual autistic savant. Anyway, finally we reach the boss fight with the Bishop Maltheus. This one took me a little bit to figure out. As it turns out, Maltheus tragically did actually believe that his child army would work, and refuses to come to grips with the fact that it didn't, whether it's out of guilt or delusion. And the children, well, they're pretty pissed at him. So Maltheus's only move is to basically explode and insta-kill anyone in sight. I couldn't tell at first if this was a distance thing or what, and eventually I learned that it was just whoever he can see dies. There's almost no cover in the arena too, and you're constantly fending off the children as well, so what I ended up doing was baiting out his explosion attack and then ducking behind this tomb to dodge the blast. After that attack, his shields were down, and I popped out and unloaded on him with Delgado's minigun, while the children all joined in too. Do this a few times, and he's toast.
Now that is karma.
With that horror behind us, we can dive into the next layer of the Pixis, which starts off with a nice palate cleanser of,
I think it's safe to say we're now under Roman rule.
Could be worse. At least the Romans were civilized.
Oh yeah, they were real civil. I mean, besides the crucifixions and the gladiatorial exhibitions, the slavery.
And let's not forget that unfortunate incident with Christ. We are, technically speaking, chaplains.
Well, you're the historian, Jones. What can you tell us about this place?
Well, if Simone can get me to fix on the year.
First century, sir. 38 AD.
38 AD? Wow, you sure? Never mind, of course you are. That means it's the reign of, let's see.
Caligula.
Yeah. How'd you know that?
Call it a lucky guess.
Let's see. It's the beginning of the fall of the Empire. And this is really far south for the Romans. No man's land, basically.
Actually, it was really just the beginning of the end for the Julio-Claudian dynasty, not the Roman Empire as a whole, because the Flavian dynasty actually brought the empire back from the edge after the Year of the Four Emperors. Alright, so Rome. This first mission is one of the ones where we cannot get incapacitated, so play carefully. We get a new enemy type in the form of these legionaries with giant tower shields that can withstand our grenade launcher. The best way to take them out is by waiting for them to peek their head over their shield or expose themselves for a pilum throw, and then use Abby's ghost bullet for the headshot. Cole's grenades or Delgado's fire demon probably work just as well, but remember, we gotta grind those 250 ghost bullet kills eventually, so every enemy that you kill on the way to that farming spot is one less that you gotta farm. At this point, they really start spamming explosive cultists too, so have your grenade launcher at the ready. We eventually come across our guide for this layer, but he's a little hung up at the moment. Another cool detail here too is that he speaks in Latin and refers to Jones as a Mara, which I assume to be a period-appropriate term for like a Moor or someone of North African descent. He explains that Cassius Vicus, a Roman statesman and rival to Emperor Caligula, was sent here to the Middle East to serve as provincial governor, as a sugar-coated form of exile, far from the Roman courts where he could pose a threat to the emperor. Here, he used his power to feed his gluttony. He hosted feasts and orgies and took slaves and concubines from the inhabitants that were incapable of meeting his steep taxes. He ran his province like a racket and engorged himself with food and sex and violence until being persuaded to open the Pyxis, which resulted in his soul, along with his corrupt legion, being swallowed by the Firstborn. You know, I gotta say, all things considered, this guy is faring a hell of a lot better, like sanity-wise, than the Templars, considering he's been here for almost 2,000 years versus the Templars' measly 800. The level design for the Roman layer is pretty bleak. It's very desolate, with a lot of people who have been left on crucifixes for, I guess, just time immemorial, to the point where their skin began to meld with the wood. Or maybe they were flayed with their excess skin flaps nailed to the cross too. This would probably feel a lot more grim if we didn't just have a child army massacre in the last layer, but, you know, whatever. It's still a cool setting, especially as you get into the interior Roman areas. Anyway, once you finish this mission and get your achievement for not getting incapacitated, we reach the Low Roads, which is the first place that you can farm some of these cumulative kill achievements. You play most of this mission solo as Delgado, but regroup with the squad at the very end. If you continue down these stairs, it triggers enemies to start spawning behind you indefinitely, so if you head right back up and go through this passageway, an infinite amount of cultists will spawn from this blood pool, and you can farm ghost bullet kills, head pops, disintegrations, and anything you want off of them. Or at least that's what the guides say. This only worked for me for like a few minutes before they just stopped spawning entirely, so I just said fuck it and left. There's other opportunities to farm these kills later on anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, if this method works for you, great. If it doesn't, no sweat, we'll get our kills later. The next level, Decadence, is another no dying mission. I actually didn't have any issues with this one, just stay back and ghost bullet, headshot, and grenade launcher everything that moves. Let the squad soak up the damage. Next level, we have the Gladiator mini-boss. These guys are kind of a classic video game boss whose weak point is, well, you guessed it, on their back. You can basically just surround him and switch back and forth between squad members so that you always have a shot on his back. He's really not that tough, but I do like this design since this is literally the first time I've actually used the move command for my squad, so that someone, always had a shot on his weak spot. Before this, I thought the order system was going to be kind of a dumb, unnecessary mechanic, but who knew? And I'm glad that I was reminded that this system existed, because right after this boss fight is a puzzle where you need to use that system to tell your squad mates to stand on pressure plates. I probably would have been stumped had I not used these commands 5 minutes earlier. If that was intentional, then hey, that's solid design. We finally meet Cassius in the flesh, and I mean in the flesh. Turns out he's built like your average Persona fan. For some reason, we don't immediately open fire on Baron Harkonnen here, and he traps us in a gladiator ring.
Welcome to the arena, good citizens of the Empire.
This is actually kind of a tough mission because, once again, you can knock it down. I eventually did figure out a strategy though. The first few rounds are just waves of simple enemies, legionaries and gargoyles, but it starts to get fucked when they throw these giant blind beasts at you. I died a lot to these guys, but eventually I figured out a way to sort of cheese them. The arena is split into sections with bridges between them, and the blind beast seems to auto-aggro onto the player as soon as they start shooting it and ignore the rest of the squad. So if you command half the squad to stay on one section of the arena, and the other to cross the bridge to a different chunk, you can basically just jump back and forth and never actually let the beast reach you. Unload onto him as one character, and when he crosses the bridge to fuck you up, swap over to someone on the other section of the arena and give him some good old-fashioned back shots, until he turns around and comes after you, and then, switch again. Just keep switching back and forth when he gets close, and you're golden. Well, you're not golden yet, because actually you gotta do this again, because you have to fight 2 of these guys in a row, and then a third time too, because then they throw a gladiator at you, so you can use the same plan there. Stick to this plan and just keep switching characters quickly enough. You'll be fine, you won't get any incapacitations. Now it's time to fight Vicus. His boss fight is pretty on rails. Not like from a gameplay perspective, I mean he's literally on rails, dangling from meat hooks and swinging around in a circle. He rips open his big old belly to spill guts onto you for damage, and it's when his open stomach is exposed that you need to shoot him. All in all, it's not really that hard, even with the gladiator in the middle harassing you. Just keep moving so neither Vicus nor the gladiator can hit you, and just land every shot that you can when Vicus shows you his tum. Once you kill Vicus, it'll prompt you to use Abby's telekinesis to blast him back towards the center, but before you do that, switch to Church. Pop something entertaining on your second monitor or your phone because we're gonna be here a little while. As Church, if you just hold down left trigger to continuously slash at Vicus's hanging corpse with your sword, because the game doesn't technically register his model as dead, every slash you land counts as a kill. And not just any kill, a melee kill. So 250 of these will eventually land us our cumulative kill achievements for melee. It takes around 15 minutes for all 250, so like I said, find some entertainment and just kind of chill while holding down the trigger. And with that, we enter the breach to the final area and head back in time to ancient Sumeria, the first civilization in history. As it turns out, the original Firstborn breach is held within the mythical Tower of Babel. After an initial fight with a boatload of cultists, Jones gets possessed by a Sumerian priest named Antaduranu. He, through Jones, explains the very first time someone tried to open the Pyxis. The first person to try to free the Firstborn was a high priestess named Erishkigal, who fell prey to the Firstborn's whispers. She marched 10,000 followers to Al-Khali and used them to construct the Tower of Babel as a temple to the Firstborn, and then she slaughtered all 10,000 of those followers on its hallowed ground to open the Pyxis. Antaduranu, here along with 6 other Sumerian priests, worked to stop her, but Erishkigal managed to warp the other 6 priests into her demonic servants. Antaduranu still managed to close the breach on his own and sent word to his followers to found an order of guardians to keep watch over the Pyxis, and should another breach be opened, they would be the ones to stop it. So, essentially, this 5,000-year-old priest was the founder of Jericho. I feel like this game should get bonus points for incorporating Sumerian culture and mythology into it. It's such a unique civilization that is completely untapped by video game world builders. The only other game that I can think of that's influenced by ancient Sumeria is Morrowind. Yeah, remember when the Elder Scrolls was good? Anyway, Erishkigal isn't just some high priestess either. That name wasn't picked out of a hat. In actual Mesopotamian mythology, She's the goddess of the underworld. She is heavily associated with the dead and the afterlife, and she's even married to the god of death and disease, Nurgle. No, not that Nurgle. Yeah, that Nurgle. And the 6 Sumerian priests that were warped into her demonic servants? Also Sumerian gods. Ninlil, the goddess of destiny. Enlil, the god of wind and storm. Ki, the goddess of earth. Sin, the god of the moon. Shamash, the god of the sun. And Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and fertility. The implication here being that what the ancient Sumerians interpreted as gods and goddesses were actually priests who were twisted, empowered, and reshaped by the Firstborn. This is such a cool concept, to take one of mankind's oldest creation myths and tie it into the plot for your 2007 Xbox first-person shooter. Oh my god, dude, Clive, where are you? Please make another game. Sorry, lost my cool there. So anyway, these 6 gods each hold a piece of Antiduranu that we need to retrieve to rebuild him so that he can finally close the Pyxis. The next level is where we're going to farm some of those cumulative kill achievements. You're forced to go solo as Abby for this part, and you have to fight through a number of standard cultist enemies in a row, so I started farming Ghost Bullet and Disintegration kills, but once I got to around this point in the tunnels, I let the cultist kill me, because restarting a checkpoint would undo any of the kills that I just got. So I replayed this opening part of the mission over and over, getting about 10 or so kills per loop, and then letting myself get killed by the cultists. Eventually, I knocked off the Ghost Bullet and the Disintegration achievements. All that was left was the 250 head pops, which you can get here, but I actually got it at a later farming point. I'll talk about that when we get there. From this point on until the end of the game, every mission has an achievement for completing it on hard without getting downed. So remember, if you die, restart your checkpoint immediately, don't let a teammate revive you. This boss is against the Sumerian meat puppets / gods, Ninlil and Ki. Ki is in the center and will just pelt you with these fire blasts, while Ninlil hides in this rotating stone coffin and summons enemies to attack you. I died a lot to these two, I'm not gonna lie, but eventually I found that if you just stay back in the previous room and mag dump the sniper into Ki with a grenade or two, they die pretty fast. For Ninlil, though, you need to use Jones's astral projection to see from these little caged guys' perspectives up above, and then use telekinesis to pull the lever on top of Ninlil's coffin, which exposes them. For the next level, Flesh, after a round of gargoyles, we have another puzzle-ish boss fight with 2 of the Sumerian gods, Enlil and Inanna. See, they have these 4 torture wheels with gimps attached and are sucking their life force from them. So if we kill the 4 gimps, then Enlil has to scoot forward a bit to roll the wheels over and replace the dead gimps with live ones. And of course, in true video game fashion, his backside that he's now showing us is his weak point. This is all easier said than done given that you are also trying to fend off a gladiator, but utilize Abby's sniper and the ghost bullets to take out the gimps and you should be good. Once Enlil is dead, the gladiator will disappear and Inanna will start summoning minions of her own, namely 3 standard cultists. But the thing is, she'll summon them indefinitely. So you know what that means. Any cumulative kill achievements that you have not gotten, now's the time. I spent 10 or so minutes popping heads and then it was time to move on. The next level is pretty tough too. It's a bit like a Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 situation. You have to fight Utu and Nana, who derive their powers from the swarms of flies that we've been seeing throughout the game, gobbling up the bodies of everyone that we kill. They're invincible, and the only way to kill them is to first wander the maze-like map and destroy all of these bloated carcasses acting as nests and breeding grounds for the flies. It's really easy to get turned around in here, but thankfully, using Abby's ghost bullet will highlight enemies through the walls, including the fly nests, so use that if you get stuck. As a reminder, you can't die here, or else it voids the achievement, so reload checkpoints if you get downed, or quickly switch to another squad mate if you start to get cornered by one of these guys. Once the nests are destroyed, blast the gods in their exposed hearts, and then we can finally resurrect Antiduranu. When we finally meet Antiduranu in the well, okay, I guess his visual design actually makes sense, since we literally had to piece him back together, but ugh. He explains that he can now seal the breach and end this cycle, and we, Jericho Squad, will enter a dreamless sleep in the Pyxis, until we're needed again when the next breach is open to shepherd along the next 7 poor souls, just like the Templars or the OSS agents. Wait, they weren't in a dreamless sleep?
I'm sorry I brought you into this. You deserve better. Would you like to pray with me?
I'm an atheist, sir.
I guess not, then.
He's lying!
What?
I said he's lying. You believe that bullshit about a dreamless sleep? Am I the only one that's been paying attention?
Look, I understand your apprehension, but...
What about the others? The Templars? The Centurion? They're not dreaming. They're not one with the great beyond. They're losing their minds in purgatory, exactly where we're gonna find ourselves when he closes that breach. That bastard is lying through his gold fucking teeth.
What are you suggesting?
We fight. If I'm gonna die here, I'm gonna die with my hands around the throat of whatever waits on the other side.
I can't let you do that.
Don't even think it.
Stop it, both of you.
Get out of the way, Billy.
Wait, let's just think about this a minute, okay? Maybe he's right.
We have a sacred duty to perform.
Sacred duty, my balls! We've been lied to, asshole! And I'm starting to think you've been in on it the entire time.
Black, secure Delgado.
What if he's right? Something doesn't make sense.
I gave you an order.
Damn it, Paul. Would you listen to me?
I'm the ranking officer here.
No, you're not.
What the hell do you think you're doing, Ross? He's going to destroy everything. There's a whole world outside full of innocent people. You think your life isn't worth saving that?
I think he's right, Paul.
Have you lost your fucking mind?
My mind is the only thing I haven't lost today.
Once again, Delgado is the voice of reason.
Betrayed, and everything you love in the world is lost. Everything I love is right here.
Oh shit, okay, maybe not the voice of reason, maybe not the voice of reason. This guy has endured 5,000 years of unending torture just to stall humanity's eventual destruction, and you just popped a deagle round into his brain. What do we do now? Well, I guess at the very least, we're committed now. Except that we're actually not committed, because that was actually our last achievement. Yeah, we 1,000 pointed the game. Jericho is one of the few games where you can actually 100% the game before completing the story. But of course, you probably want to know what the last mission is. You probably want to know what the ending is, right? We should see this through and play the last mission anyway. Well, strap in, because it's very disappointing. You end up in this seaside cave with the Firstborn, as you turn to see Leech impaled up on the wall. Looks like whatever his plan was with the Firstborn failed. And then, while still stuck in the cutscene, the Firstborn kinda just explodes Jones and Cole.
Oh, shit.
Like, there isn't really any time to process it, because then they just drop you into the boss fight. The boss fight isn't even particularly hard. The Firstborn will sap the psychic powers from a squad member and use those powers against you, at which point you swap to said character and fight back using the same powers. Do that a few times and Leech will break free from the wall and swipe up Black Baby to finish them. The ensuing energy outburst threatens to collapse the cave, so we all jump back into the underground lake and emerge on a beautiful sunlit sea. And that's it. Roll credits. Okay, so many questions, dude. What the fuck? So, okay, where were we? Well, was the seaside cave some sort of, like, original Garden of Eden? The starting point of all life? What's outside the mouth of the cave? It looked like just blinding bright light. What happened when Leech pulled Black Baby into the light? Why did the Firstborn want Ross to enter the Pyxis so bad? Was absorbing Ross's ability to transfer consciousness key to him escaping the Pyxis? Why did the cave even collapse? Where did we end up at the end? It looked like just a vast, endless ocean. If God locked away the Firstborn right after creating him, could this layer of the Pyxis where it resides be an ancient primordial version of Earth? In its early years, some 3 billion years ago, Earth's surface was completely covered in water, so I guess that would make sense. But that also makes for a pretty grim ending. The surviving members of Jericho just slowly drown one by one in an endless ancient ocean world. I guess we'll never know. I'm gonna have to guess that they were hitting budget limits or time restrictions and couldn't really flesh out a proper ending, and it's a shame. I did actually find what is apparently a data-mined text file containing dialogue from an unused original ending cutscene. So, according to this, apparently the big reveal at the end would be that the Firstborn isn't actually evil, and that Erishkigal, the Sumerian priestess, has actually enslaved and consumed the Firstborn's divine power to make herself a god. She has been the one calling out to people over the course of history, luring them to Al-Khali so she can consume them and grow more powerful to eventually take over the world and shape it in her own twisted image. Leech offers the corpse of Ross as a vessel for the Firstborn to take over, without realizing it's actually been Ereshkigal that he's been serving this whole time. The Firstborn tells Ross that it can't defeat Ereshkigal as it has no soul, and it's impossible to exist outside of the Pyxis in our reality without a soul. So Ross offers to bind his soul to the Firstborn, and then together they would have a final boss fight against Ereshkigal, who is in Ross's body. After defeating her, the Firstborn is freed from the Pyxis, but is now eternally bonded to Ross's soul. The epilogue would show that the rest of Jericho, back in their own reality, lament that eventually their superiors are gonna wanna hunt down Ross and the Firstborn, and most likely they'll be the ones tasked to do it. We leave off on a cliffhanger that Rawlings drops as he alludes to the fact that the folk that they work for goes way beyond the top US military brass. I think the implication there might be that their shadowy superiors actually wanted to contain the Firstborn, and were either in cahoots with Ereshkigal or wanted to take her place and harness the Firstborn's power for themselves, which is why destroying it was never an option that was even considered for their mission. So I choose to believe that this leak is legit, because it would explain, A, where Ereshkigal is, seeing as she's the first one to open the breach into the Pyxis, and she wasn't one of the priests or the gods that we fought, so she seems like a pretty important character to just be name-dropped and not actually show up. And B, why the Firstborn was beckoning Ross to come to the Pyxis in the first place. It wanted Jericho to save it and stop Ereshkigal. It also gave an even stronger narrative reason why Rawlings was so against destroying the Firstborn. He's a loyal company man who tries to follow his orders to a T, but would ultimately come to the aid of his team. Or, more adequately put,
I never was very good at following orders, holy or otherwise.
What could have been. Clive Barker did have full intentions to make a sequel to this game, but Jericho, just like all of his other forays into gaming, was a failure. While I did really enjoy the game conceptually, it is incredibly rough around the edges. The World War II act was pretty lackluster, and the final Sumerian act, while certainly unique, it felt more like a boss gauntlet. Like there weren't any specific enemy types to Sumeria, like there were in the other layers. There were just the 6 priest gods who were kind of their own little puzzle boss fights. The gameplay overall was fine, though I feel I'm not the best judge of that since I played 90% of the game as only one character. But that being said, there were very few points where I felt the game was genuinely boring or sluggish. I had a good time all the way through. The achievements were pretty easy and simple, and while I don't think it's a masterpiece, Clive Barker's Jericho certainly deserved better. Thanks so much for watching. This is a pretty different video from my usual stuff, since there isn't really a ton to talk about with this game, gameplay or achievement-wise. But The story and the concept and all these little historical details were just so fucking cool to me. I still want to make a video about it. I'm hoping someone like Night Dive will do a full remaster of Clive Barker's Undying at some point, because I'd love a modern version of that with like achievement support. Anyway, like and subscribe and leave a comment, you know, usual. And, go watch Nightbreed. Seriously, it's a lot of fun.